Hi there, I'm Champion Trader Kevin Davey, and today in this video I'm going to talk to you about AI assisting me in coming up with some good algo trading entries. So let's get started. Before we get started, if you haven't signed up for my free algo strategy, now's the time to do so. Hit the QR code or enter the link you see at the bottom, or in the description you'll find a link. In today's video we're going to look at AI generated filters. Okay, so I sent this to ChatGPT. It just said give me 50 technically based filters. So nothing special. I wasn't asking for unique ones. I didn't spend a lot of time on this prompt. I get it. But I just wanted to see what it would generate. And it gave me a list with the code in TradeStation format. Of course, there's always issues with the code. I won't get into that here, but it gave me 50. From that, I picked 15 for further testing. Why did I pick those 15? It was more or less at random. I just tried to pick some different stuff. Maybe eventually I'll test all the rest of them. The biggest thing is, okay, well now you have the 15, how do you actually test it? So what I did was I did it with adding the filter to 4 standard entries and counter trend entries, 2 exits, 44 markets, 3 bar sizes. I did walk forward testing with different combinations, 18 years of testing, and then 16 total filters, including the baseline 0 filter case. And that was over 200,000 unique equity curves. It took 3 or 4 days full-time running on my computer, close to 1 equity curve generated per second. So it was a lot of data there, a lot of testing. And as you probably know, when you look to test something, you might see some examples and think, oh, okay, well this looks good. Last week it had 3 correct filtering attempts, so I'm not going to test it over the last 10 years because it worked the last 3 days or whatever. You got to realize when you do that kind of thing, when you do rigorous testing, it's usually going to turn bad. You know, there's outliers that show good performance for a short period of time and then fall apart. You've got to do rigorous testing, and that's what I preach all the time. And if you've seen my other videos, you're probably sick of me saying, hey, you got to do the testing. You got to do the testing. Well, that's what I'm saying here. More of the same. And you've got to test not only filters, but entries, exits. You got to test everything. Okay? The problem is that takes up a lot of time, and it's a lot of effort. And when you think about how to test, you insert a chart into your software, you insert the strategy into the chart, you set up the optimization if you're doing any kind of optimization, you run it, you get the results, you set the results aside, then you change your chart, change your bar size, change whatever you're doing, and run it again. And you keep doing that. That takes forever, okay? Extremely time consuming is putting it mildly. So I get around that with a tool called Multi-Walk that a student of my course actually built that cuts development time by my estimates and my testing about 93%. You might even get better than that, but that's a huge time savings because it can test multiple markets, multiple bar sizes, multiple walk forward, in and out periods. You can test a lot of things. You set it all up front and just let it go. Pretty neat. Now, back to my testing here, I didn't do stop and reverse, so I needed some other exits. So I just used some time-based exits, but you can see the code and the 4 base entries. There's a momentum entry, a cross above a moving average, there's a breakout entry, there's a MACD. These are all pretty standard, nothing really special here. And I did the opposite of them. You can see instead of the momentum being up being a buy signal, it's a sell short signal. But in all cases, you see this market position equals 0. What that means is it wants a flat position before taking a new trade. So you've got to have some exits to accommodate that. And then, and I'll talk about this later, there's this filter short and filter long. It's a true-false statement, and that helps if you have a filter active. Okay, so the exits, I said, are either after 10 bars or 20 bars. I ran some different cases, but that makes sure I get out of trades. No profit target, no stop loss with this particular research study. So the filters, I'm not going to talk about each one. I just list them here. I'm not saying ones are better than the others, but I will show the code for 3 of the top 5. I have another video out there that shows the top, or 2 of the top 5. So I split it up into 2 videos. And you can see some of these you might know, some of these you might not. You can always put them into Chat GPT and ask for code in your particular language, and it'll probably give you something. Whether or not it works, you might have to finagle it a little bit, but you might get something. Okay, so pretty typical. I asked for it in easy language format, and usually it has to adjust or fix the code. Here's an example of an ADX filter. So if the ADX is greater than a certain value that I can optimize, then filter long is true. Otherwise, filter long is short. So somewhere up in the code, I probably initially set filter long to false, and then the only way it turns true is if this happens. So that's one way of looking at it. Of course, it goes through here, and it's going to assign true or false to this all the time. And then the way I have it set up is your long and short are the same for ADX. So it's just looking for a trend with ADX. So this is always going to be true or false. So it's going to reassign it at every bar. Okay. So if I had an initial, I mentioned the initial setting of it, that always gets overwritten by this. Okay. And then when you put it into the entry, it just says, hey, if you're flat and your long filter says true, means go for it, and you've got this cross above 0, then buy. That's it. So this makes it an easy setup for doing multiple filter testing. So let's look at the results. Net profit, they're all better than the baseline case, which was no filter. Net profit to average drawdown, which is my favorite metric, all better than having no filter. And percent trades profitable, almost always better. It's never worse, but sometimes it's the same as having no filter. So these filters do work. Top 5 sorted by net profit to average drawdown, 1, 6, 2, 14, and 4. And they're much better than not having a filter. So what were those? Filter 6 is stochastics. Filter 14, liquidity sweep. Filter 4, moving average slope. Filters 1 and 2, which were in the top 5, I talk about in another video. So let's look at the code for those 3 of the top 5 best ones. Here's the moving average slope. Just says if the moving average of a certain period is better than the bar before, meaning the slope's going up, that's a good long filter. Okay, then it's stochastic. If the slow K is less than a certain value, then that's a good long filter, and vice versa for the short. Well, 100 minus that value. And then for the liquidity sweep, it just says, hey, if you have the lowest low of a certain number of bars and the close is greater than the previous close, apparently that's what ChatGPT thought a liquidity sweep was, and so that's a good long filter. Okay, fair enough. I didn't try to argue or understand how often this works and doesn't work. I just wanted to test them. But those are the codes for those 3 of those top 5 filters. Again, the other 2 are in a different video. Input var 2 was my input variable, and as part of this testing I ran it from 10 to 50 in steps of 5. So that's why you see some of this where I had to divide it by 5, because I had to normalize some of the values so I could just use one set of input variable combinations or values and then have it run multiple cases. So those were the best 3. They show a lot of promise, but hey, more testing's required, right? And if you know me and you've seen my other videos, you know that a lot of testing, a lot of different testing, is something you must do to vet your algo strategy. Okay, so here I was just testing filters, but hey, maybe these filters are ones you want to incorporate as part of your normal development process. And speaking of process, the filters are important, but the process is much more important. Your overall process, how you go from point A over here to point B over here with your strategies, that's what's really important, and that's what you got to keep in mind. The process is what's important. Here's my process. I call it the Strategy Factory. I teach a course on it. There's a lot to it. Looks simple, and the steps sound simple, but the details are what can get you in trouble. But when you follow this process and do it the right way, you really reduce your chances of curve fitting, over optimization, and a ton of other pitfalls that most algo traders fall into. Well, hey, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you have ideas for future videos, leave a comment. I'd love to hear them. I'm always willing to listen. All right, I'm Champion Trader Kevin Davey. Have a great day. Well, if you'd like more information on algo trading, hit the QR code. It'll take you to Amazon where you can look at my 5 trading books.